Hello and welcome back to Hot Dog Crochet. My name is Jamie and I'm a crochet artist that lives in southeastern Wyoming. I am doing this video for Bonnie, and for anyone else that's interested, I'm going to be talking about garment making kind of in general, and then I'm going to narrow down to garment making, specifically sweaters and shirts. Pretty much all of my clothing that I have made, I have come up with on my own. There is one sweater that two sweaters that I have knit that I tried to follow the pattern as best as I could on one, and then on the other one I used the starting number of rounds and then kind of dove off onto my own. But everything else I have created on my own without a pattern. I have made pants, shorts, I have made shirts, I have made sweaters and cardigans, blankets, I make all kinds of things. So in general, when you're going to knit or crochet yourself any kind of garment, you want to know how long to make your starting chain, or however you're starting your cast on, or whatever stitch you're using to start with. You need to know how many stitches, right? But if you're coming up with it on your own, there's nobody telling you how many stitches to start with, or how many loops to start with, or how many cast-ons to start with, or cast-on stitches to start with. And that's something that you'll get better with as you create more garments. Now, some basic rule of thumb is that anything that you're going to knit or crochet, you have to remember that the weight of the material that you're creating, in some instances, although not all, will affect your neckline or your hemline, because that weight of the fabric that you create will pull on it, especially with, knit and crochet, but I do find that it is even more prevalent in crochet projects. So I'm going to show you a few projects. This isn't even half of what I have created in the last several years for myself. Just to give you a little backstory before I show you stuff, I ended up with an ostomy in 2016, and that changed my body shape in certain ways, and it changed how clothes fit. And personally, I don't care if people know I have an ostomy. I don't care if people see the ostomy bag. I don't care if they see the ostomy. I have no shame about it, because my ostomy literally saved my life. That being said, most people don't want to see my ostomy bag or my ostomy. They don't want to know that it's there. And I'm perfectly fine with that. So that means that when I'm designing clothing, I have to make sure that I'm leaving extra room and extra flow in my garments, so that it is a lot harder to notice my bag, especially like when it starts, how do I say this without being gross? When stuff starts moving through, that bag will expand. And that is pretty easily seen underneath a lot of clothing. And so I tend to make clothes for myself that are larger and either bulkier or have different textures, so it's harder to notice my bag. That's one of the considerations that I have to take in, that I think about when I'm making my own clothing. You can make anything from babies' clothes to adults' clothes. You can make, you know, bikini tops and tank tops, and you can make dresses and skirts. The sky is literally, there is no limit. So I'm going to show you some of the items that I have created. There's a few that are crochet and there are a few that are knit. And then I will talk about the construction. Now, all of these items that I'm going to show you outside of the pants are considered raglan construction. So what that means is that you have basically 4 increase points that create that diagonal so that you can have room for your underarm. The other, there's a couple other types of construction, but the other one that I'm going to talk about in this video is yoke construction, circular continuous yoke construction. It's not my favorite way to design, well, to create a garment. I'm much more comfortable with raglans, but you need the same understanding for both. Okay, so I knit this sweater in 2024. Sorry, I had to think about that. So this, well, it's not exactly a sweater. It is a shirt. It is made out of fingering weight yarn, and I did not have a pattern for it. So when I'm talking about raglan construction, you can see that diagonal line there. It shows up on the front and on the back on both shoulders. And what that's doing is it's creating enough room where I can connect underneath the underarm and have enough room for my arm. This type of construction is a boxy construction. So most raglans that you're going to find in patterns or that you're going to create on your own are going to be fairly boxy, because just by the nature of how you create them, that's what you get for the most part. So the next garment I'm going to show you is this granny stitch raglan top-down sweater. So I forgot to mention something. You can create a shirt or a sweater from the top down or the bottom up. I prefer, in all the garments that, pretty much all of the tops that I wear now are top down construction. I do have one that is bottom up, but I don't like it, so I don't wear it. Now, when you're making bottom up, you can still have that raglan. It's just you're going in reverse. And so instead of increasing, you're decreasing. So this is a quick cardigan that I created. and I do actually often wear. It's nice and warm. I made it out of Parfait Layers. Parfait Layers cakes. I don't think that they're available anymore. They are an older type chenille yarn. They're fairly thin. So what I did was I doubled it up, and I did 2 strands at the same time, which for me worked out great. I like how the colors kind of flow. So when I was doing this, and when I do like a top-down raglan, typically what I will do is I will create the body, the neck and the body all the way down, and then I go back and I do the sleeves. I don't have a problem with being on Sleeve Island. I know I shouldn't say a lot. There are some people that when they get to the sleeves, they get bogged down. I don't mind doing sleeves. To me, it's real quick. It's quick, it's fast. And even if I'm knitting a full length, full arm, it typically only takes me a day, maybe 2, to knit the entire arm. Now, when I'm knitting the entire body of the shirt or the sweater, that takes a lot longer. And same thing with if I'm crocheting it, the body takes longer. So I always finish the body first, and then I go back and I finish the sleeves. However, when you divide for the sleeves, you can totally do your sleeves at, you know, put your last stitch for the body on hold and do your do the arms of the sweater or the sleeves, and then go back and finish the body. There really aren't, hard and fast rules about how you make your garment. There's some traditional ways, but if that doesn't work for you, try and figure out what does. Same thing with when you're holding your hook in your yarn, you're learning how to tension. All of that is very individualized because we all have different ways of holding our hook and our yarn. And even when it comes to like making a single crochet or a double crochet, US terms, we don't all do that exactly the same. Do we come up with the same stitch? Yes. But like when you yarn over, when you're going to do a double crochet, do you hold that yarn with your finger? Do you hold it with your thumb? Do you not hold it at all? Do you have a different way of holding on to it? Like maybe grabbing up and around? There's a couple different ways that I know of that I've seen people controlling their yarn, and that's just the yarn over for a double crochet. So there is a lot of play in how you crochet or knit. Okay, so this was my top-down cardigan, one of my top-down cardigans. This is currently my favorite jacket to wear when we're going somewhere. This jacket did not take me very long. I think it took me maybe about a week, but I was not working on it consistently. Am I at the top? I'm at the top. Okay. So this one, again, is a top-down raglan. I put, nope, I have it on inside out. Sorry. So I did put on buttons so that I could close the cardigan up if I wanted to. but I wear it more like a jacket because it is a heavier weight. Sorry, it's a heavier weight yarn. Well, not really. It's a 4 weight, but I've doubled it up. That's how I got the heavier weight. Okay. So this one is also one of my top-down raglans, because again, that's pretty much my favorite construction style. So when you're thinking about your sweater or your shirt or your pants, your dress, your skirt, whatever you're making, there are some decisions that you make up front. Doesn't mean that you can't go back and change that, but we make some decisions up front. So we make decisions about, do we want a collar? Do we want just kind of like an open neck or a boat neck? Because all those different, or a V-neck, all those different necklines can have different ways of contributing to how you create your top-down top. This is fingering weight held double. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on, this is Copy Cali, and I'm blanking on what the name of the pattern is. Now this is the one knit sweater that I really did try to follow the pattern. However, my gauge was off a little bit because I was using 2 strands of yarn that were a little bit thicker than what she was using. I thought that they were the same when I did my calculations, but they weren't. And so that meant that as I was getting into the sweater, I had to start making some changes so that the sweater would fit the way that I want it to fit. Okay. And last but not least, oh no, I have two more things to show you. So this is my pair of pants. Obviously you're not seeing the whole thing of any of this, but this is a very similar concept as to making your sweater or your shirt or your top, whatever you're making, because you need to know how many stitches or how many rows do you need to do for your particular piece. I can't tell you what is going to work for you. I can give you suggestions on how to get there, but your body is different than my body. Another crochet artist's body and how they design it is going to be different than how I would create. You learn from other creators, whether that's watching their videos or by utilizing either a free or a paid pattern. I am really liking, now that I've kind of got the hang of it, Instagram for free patterns. And you can find free patterns for clothing on there. You can find patterns on Ravelry or on Etsy or on Ribbler. You can get patterns off of like Lion Brand and Yarn Inspirations, I'm sorry, said that wrong. because Yarn Inspirations owns Karen Burnett and Red Heart and Peyton's Croy, I believe. So if you're going to use one of those yarns and you're not sure where to start, by all means, go to that particular website where they sell, well, the makers of the yarn, and look for patterns. Even if you go to like Hobby.com, they have patterns to go with their yarns, and they know what yarns typically work best in what garments. And so they're going to give you a suggestion of what yarn they're using, what hook they're using, and they're going to tell you that you have to do a gauge swatch. Now, here's where I differ a little bit with that, because I almost always make a top-down construction, which means I'm continuously trying this on, or if I'm making it for someone else, I'm making them try it on, because that allows me to make adjustments in real time and not have to go back and, for the most part, and rip out a lot of stuff and then redo it. Sometimes I have to do that, but for the most part, having people try things on as I'm going, whether it's myself or my mother or, you know, a friend or whomever, for me is the best way to get a garment to come out the way I want it to. However, that's me. I don't like doing gauge swatches. Every once in a while I will. For this sweater I did, but usually I just kind of wing it and I make it work. Sometimes that doesn't always work out the best for me, and sometimes it does. So it just kind of depends. What else do I have to say? Like this pair of pants, you can create a waistband or a neckband that actually has elastic in it. Now on this one, what I did was I crocheted a long flat piece that would go around my waist and was wide enough that the elastic would sit comfortably in it, but it wouldn't be so big that the elastic would be doing a lot of twisting and moving. You can do this for a neckline, you can do it for cuffs on a sweater, you can do it for, like I said, like a waistband, a hemline, and it's pretty handy to be able to do that. After I crocheted my long thin flat piece, I folded it over on itself, or folded it in half, and I put, well, before I did that, I ran the elastic between the two ends of the flat piece, and then I crocheted all the way around to close up that tube, and then I connected, as you can see, I connected the two ends to, or the two open ends together. But before I did that, I sewed the elastic together, and before I did that, I tried it on, and then I sewed the elastic, and then after I had sewed the elastic together, I crocheted the ends together. In the pair of shorts that I made, I left this open, and I did that on purpose because I was having a lot of fluctuating weight, and I decided that it would be better to be able to change that elastic band where whether it's tighter or it's looser. But frankly, I made those pants in 2020, or not pants, shorts, and I made them in 21, and I have not done anything to change the waistband on it. It's available to me if I want to, but I have not done that. But again, those are decisions that you can make, that you make often prior to, maybe not prior to getting started, but as you go along. My Leaning Tower of Pisa here. Okay, so this is another crochet shirt that I made, and the interesting thing about this one is, well, not interesting. Most of these that you saw had similar stitches or stitch patterns. I knew when I made this one that I wanted to do the fans or shells, and that's another part of designing or creating your own garments, is you kind of want to know what stitch you want to use. It doesn't mean that if the stitch doesn't work out that you're not going to change it up and find something else that will give you a similar effect, but you find a pattern that you like, and then you start with it. So now I'm going to show you the beginning of a sweater. Now this one is a top down, but it is not a raglan. So this is going to be a summer top. It is, I'm making it out of acrylic. I've had this particular yarn for many, many years. This is Karen United. I don't know if you can even get this anymore. It's in the color burgundy, and I want to say I got these in like 2017 maybe. Yeah, I think 2017 or 2018, probably 2018. And so my plan is to just make myself a quick summer top. So what you'll notice is that the top is really stretchy. It's more of it's basically a mesh stitch. And let me put it on here. It's kind of ruffly right now, but as the weight of the fabric I'm creating gets heavier, it is going to flatten out. I'm right at the point now where I'm going to start doing differentiating between the front and the back. And why I'm going to do that is I'm female, and so I want coverage in the front, but I don't necessarily need that same coverage in the back. I'm doing that because I want a nice, light, breezy, flowy top for the summer. I will be able to wear it in summer and in winter. In winter, I will layer, and so I'll wear something like this underneath my sweatshirts, or I'll wear a tank top underneath my sweatshirts, or I'll wear something like this or a tank underneath one of my cardigans. I do not layer up my wools. That for me would be too warm, but you can do that. So what I'm going to do now that, I didn't tell you about the construction. This is a continuous circular yoke. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop increasing for a little bit because I have enough increases for right now. I am going to do single crochet, chain one, single crochet, chain one. So I know that is the moss stitch. Some people know it as the linen stitch. I've also heard it called a couple other things, but I'm going to call it the moss stitch. And it's one of my favorite stitches. I use it a lot in blankets and in clothing because you're creating a fabric that's not quite as heavy as if you did a single crochet in every stitch. But the other thing that you're doing is you're creating a fabric that you're not really going to see through. Now, I started this particular piece out with a 4mm hook. And then after I did 2 rows, I did the starting, I don't really want to call it chains because I did a chain 3 and then I double crocheted back into the bottom of that chain 3. And then I chained 3 and I double crocheted back into that loop that I had created, and then I just kept going. And that created the these loops. And then what I did was I wanted to make sure that I had enough room to put it on and off over my head. So how did I do that? I know that when I am creating a garment like this, that I want, when I first do my chain or I do my loops like this, or however I started out, I need to have it come down to here at the very least, because that will give me enough room to pull it over my head. I made it a little bit bigger so that it'd be easier to pull it on and off. Now, the other thing is that you have to be aware that the weight of your fabric that you're creating is going to pull your neckline down. You can reinforce your neckline, and there are a couple ways to do that. You could do something like the thermal stitch for like 2 rounds when you first start. Or another thing that you could do is you could do a folded collar, and that's where you knit or crochet for so many rows, and then you fold it over. You would take the top, and you would basically take the bottom of what you had created and the top, and then you would knit or crochet it together. And that creates a stronger neckline that is not going to be one that's going to pull down real easily. Another thing to be aware of is what type of yarn are you using. This is acrylic, so it will have a stretch factor to it, and once it stretches, it doesn't really go back to its shape. This one is cotton and acrylic. It does have a little bit of stretch, but not a lot, and it goes back to the shape that I first crocheted in. My wool projects, after they're washed, we block them, which means we lay them out the way that we want them to dry. And that can give you some extra length in the arms or in the waistband. So wool, depending on the type of wool, can stretch. Superwash is the one that tends to stretch more, and that's my favorite wool. 100% merino that is non-superwash is not going to stretch. Some of your 100% cottons will have maybe a little bit of stretch, but not a lot. But they also don't have the bounce back factor that you get with other other types of yarn. My superwash, as soon as it's wet and it's clean and we lay it out, we can manipulate that shape. We can do the same with my cotton and acrylic blends. But when you're talking about something that is a chenille like this, it's technically a polyester. It's once the shape is made, you've crocheted it or knit it, you're not going to change that shape. That's the way that it is. What else? I think that is all that I wanted to say about these. I'm gonna go put my stuff away and then I will come back and talk to you. So we're back. So the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about is color. How do you like to play with color? Do you like to switch, how do I say this? Do you like to switch skeins often to get like a rainbow effect? Or do you buy a skein of yarn because of the colorway and how it shifts or the color moves in it? Personally, I like buying yarns that are longer colorways instead of shorter colorways. So shorter colorways would be your variegated. So I know this is Bernat Blanket, but this is a variegated, and this is a short color length yarn. And what that means is that the blue is like 2 stitches long, and then you go into another color and it may be 1, maybe 2 stitches long. You're not going to have a long run of stitches in the same color, and that's a short colorway. The long colorways, you have well, like it implies, you have a lot more yarn of one color to work with. It's really nice when you're using like Karen Cotton Cakes or a mandala, like Lamb Brand mandala, or you're using something else that has long colorways, whether it's an ombre or it's a rainbow or it's a gradient, whatever it is to that caught your eye about that colorway of yarn. It's as beautiful as it looks in the skein, it does not always look as beautiful when it's worked up in different stitches. And part of that is because your longer colorways means that you have a you may have, especially when you're making a garment, you could have 30 to 100 stitches in one color, and then you switch to the yarn switches to another color, and then it'll switch back, and then you have like 1 or 2 stitches, like say in yellow, and then it'll bump back over into like pink. And then it'll stay pink for a very long time. And you have to kind of make the decision on, are you going to cut that and take that part where the color bled over, or the color didn't take very well? Are you going to cut that out, or are you just going to leave it in? Are you going to use, like say you bought a couple of cakes, Karen Cotton Cakes, and you start creating your garment. Are you going to color control and, you know, do all of one color and then all of the next color? Meaning you break up your cakes into the individual colors, and then you do all of one color, and then all of the next color, and then the next color, and then the next color, or are you just going to let it flow? I'm the kind of person that I tend to just let it flow. Now in this garment, it's going to be different because I want a nice flowy garment, but I'm using what I have. I'm basically out. Well, I have a few Karen cotton cakes left, but not enough for me to make a garment for myself. Whether I'm knitting or crocheting, just not enough. So I'm going to use what I have. And this is not my favorite color of red. It is also not a color that I would typically pick. I got this on, I guarantee you I got this on clearance. However, I am going to use it because I want, how do I say this right? I'm really trying hard to use my stash. I have a very large stash because I was a yarn hoarder for a long while. Basically from 2016 until December of last year. I finally got the gumption and the energy to, instead of buying new yarn to make a project, using what I have. Because I have purchased a ton of yarn in the past and I have not used it. So I would like to use it. So that's what I'm doing. I am, what else can I say about this? I am going to do color changes in this, which means more ends and weaving them in and all that good stuff, because I don't have enough of the red to make the entire garment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my colors as I go, basically. Some people like to have their colors all laid out before they even start. Other people like me just kind of go with the flow. And for me, that works well. May not work well for you. What else? Stitch markers. I don't use a ton of stitch markers, especially when I'm crocheting garments. Now, when I'm knitting garments, I use a lot more. But crocheting garments, I usually don't need to use a lot of stitch markers. However, like in a project like this where I'm going to differentiate between the front and the back, I am going to put a couple stitch markers in just to give myself, how do I say this? To give myself the comfort of knowing that I'm doing the right stitches in the right places. You can use any kind of stitch marker you want. You can, buy a stitch marker. You can use a little bit of leftover yarn. Whatever works for you, do that. Typically, when I'm getting ready to crochet a project, I do like to cake up my skeins. I don't like working directly from the skein. Caking it up means that if I run into a factory knot, I can deal with it ahead of time if I want to. This time I'm going to be working from the skeins. I'm not going to bother caking them up. So I will organically run into those knots. Factory knots and yarn are just part of the process. Yarn companies try really hard to not have that happen. However, when you are producing yarn, two things can happen when you're going from they typically have the yarn wound onto really big cones or really big, what else have I seen? Mostly cones is I think what I've seen. And then when they're taking it from that and putting it into a skein or into a smaller cone that you or I as the consumer would buy, there's a couple things that can happen in that process. First thing that can happen is that cone that everything is coming off of to make your skein or your cone can run out. Like, that's just part of the process. They use every ounce of yarn that they can. And so if it's only got enough to make half a skein or a third of a skein or whatever it is, they use it and then they put on the next big cone, they tie it together, and off they go. The second thing that can happen is that the yarn from the large cone going down into the skein or the smaller cone can break, because there is a lot of tension on that yarn to keep it wound at the to keep the the way the yarn is spun, to keep it that spin in there the way that they created it, because if they do it wrong, that the plies of the yarn will split. But they also need it to have the right type of tension for it to hold its shape in the cake or the skein or the ball or the cone, whatever they're doing it. However they're getting it ready to package it for market, they need it to stay in that state. And yarn is fragile. Some are more fragile than others. So like if I were to do that with this yarn, it'd be very difficult to break this yarn for me. But other yarns, like these are a polyester based yarn. These are easier to break, especially the older skeins that I have. Not so much the newer skeins. And that's something that you need to be aware of. As you're crocheting, the type of yarn that you're using can break. Some break easier than others. There is a type of yarn called unspun. And so if you're knitting, or, man, this just sounds awful to me, crocheting with unspun, you can't have a lot of tension, because unspun means it doesn't have a twist in it. And so it's very easy for those fibers to pull apart. Once they're like knitted or crocheted into a project, they tend to kind of bind down. And so you're not going to have the project just fall apart. But in creating the project, it's very easy to break that yarn. So those are some considerations. So when I am going to sit down, when the inspiration strikes, and that's how it is for me, I don't just say, oh, I want a top. It's inspiration strikes and I want a top and I know what I want. That's when I sit down and start creating. The first thing that I do is the neckline. And you can measure your neckline and figure out where you want it to sit, like with a with measuring tape. I was going to say ruler. But with a measuring tape, you can measure where you want that to sit. I don't do that. I just start and I know where I want that chain to kind of hit on my body when I have it created, because again, the weight of the yarn is, or the fabric you're creating is going to start pulling on that neckline. Even if you're making a reinforced neckline, it is still going to be pulled some because of the weight of the yarn. well, the fabric. So on this particular piece, let me see if I can find some more. Here we go. So what I did for this particular neckline is I started with a slip knot. And this is a 4 worsted weight. This is a 5 bulky. Or is it a 6? I think it's a 5. Now this is Hometown by Lion Brand, and it is a really nice silky yarn, shiny, like you would find in Karen Cotton, or not Karen Cotton Cakes, in Karen's Simply Soft. So what I did was I chained 3, yarned over, and then I went into that first stitch and pulled up a loop, and then pulled through 2, and then pulled through 2. And what that does is it creates that loop, I call it, and then I chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I crochet back into that loop, or double crochet, I'm sorry. And then I keep doing this until this starting chain or this starting loop fits and hits where I want it to. You can do a single crochet chain, you can do a single crochet foundation chain, however you want to start it, go for it. Oh, I'm sorry. There are more types of construction of garments. I just usually don't do them. So like you can do 2 squares and then stitch or crochet them, sew or crochet them together. If you know me, you know I do not like to sew. I'm getting better at it. But it's one of those things that, you know, if I had a gazillion dollars, I would pay somebody else to sew everything. I'll create it, you sew it, you know. But that's not how life works. Okie dokies. Whoop. So, once you've got your starting chain, or however you're going to start your particular neckline, then you're going to move into your stitch, your preferred stitch. So whether you're doing a moss stitch, or you're doing a granny stitch, or you're doing a fan stitch, or you've decided to do like a pineapple motif, whatever that stitch pattern is that you chose, that's what you move into next, unless you've decided to break it up and have different stitch patterns throughout the garment. Then you start with whatever your first stitch pattern is. So my first stitch pattern in this particular piece, of course, is the mesh, like I stated earlier. But my next stitch, what I'm going to do in this process is I'm going to do the moss stitch, and I'm going to do the this mesh stitch. So the front of the garment is going to have the moss stitch. The back of the garment is going to have the this chain 3 mesh stitch pattern. What that means is that when the front is ready to divide to the back, if I, let me say this a different way. What I can do, because this mesh stitch is going to be more stretchy than the moss stitch, when I'm on the chain 3 mesh stitch, I can go down a hook size or 2 or whatever I'm comfortable with to get me down so that my chain 3s are that the hole for the mesh stitch is a little bit smaller, and then do the moss stitch with the larger hook. Or what I can do, which is what I often do, is I connect them before the front is really ready, or in my mind is really ready. And so what I do is I add stitches under the underarm. Like usually in a pattern, you'll see that they want you to add like, usually no more than like 5 stitches in the underarm. When I'm ready to do that, I tend to add a lot more stitches, like 15 or 20 or more, depending on the stitch pattern and how it fits. So that's what I'm going to do with this piece, is I am going to connect it with extra stitches. That helps me because, again, my body shape is kind of odd. And so I want to make sure that there's enough fabric to A, cover my ostomy mini-me, and B, be kind of flowy so he's not as easily seen. And so that extra fabric in the back, and so sorry, short night, and in the underarm area helps to give that extra fabric that does actually flow around the body. So what I'm going to do is stick with, I think, unless I change my mind, is stick with the same hook, and then I'm going to do the increases under the, I'm going to add stitches in the underarm so that they can connect when I want them to, rather than when they would more naturally connect. If I wait for when they would more naturally connect, I'm going to end up with an underarm that's just too long for me. I have made garments that way, and it's very easy. It's just, if you're not planning on putting on a sleeve, then I would recommend doing the increases under the underarm rather than waiting until the 2 pieces meet and you can easily crochet them together. But both work. So it depends on what you want and what you're looking for. And are you going to add sleeves? Are you not going to add sleeves? Are you going to add really small sleeves? That all plays into how are you going to create your underarm. So I am going to leave you there, and I will come back when I've done some more work on my sweater. So hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. And hopefully, Bonnie, this answers your question. And as I go through this, hopefully this will give you an idea of how I create my garments, and hopefully will give you the inspiration that if you want to, you can create your own. And that goes for anybody out there. I suggest, if you are worried about making a mistake, find a pattern you like that's not expensive or that you can get for free, and do that. If you're feeling more adventurous and more wild, just dive in. I've learned more from creating stuff, my own garments, than I have from like patterns or from watching YouTube videos. Now that does not mean that I don't learn things from YouTube videos or from patterns, because I do. But I personally learn a lot when I do it, and have to figure it out for myself. I'm a big believer in fake it till you make it. And so if it's not perfect, that's okay. I know there are people out there that feel that something has to be perfect, and I would rather have the garment than rip it out a gazillion times and not have the garment because I've gotten frustrated. So that is my take on it. Your take on it may be different, and that's okay. The nice thing about crocheting a garment over knitting a garment is that it is very easy to rip back and not go too far, or lose stitches. When you're knitting, you can drop stitches, and yes, you can pick them up and you can fix that. But again, that's a little bit more advanced technique. I'm talking about picking up the skeins of yarn, you know, at Walmart or your local yarn shop, or wherever you get them online, or wherever, and you've decided to create a garment. Now, one last thing before I let you go. How much yarn are you going to need? I can't tell you. It depends on you. It depends on how big the garment needs to be. I am currently like somewhere between a 3 and 4 X t-shirt, because I like them big and flowy. You most likely are a lot smaller than me, or you may not. You may be more of like an hourglass shape or a pear shape, or, you know, your body is your body. So that's part of it. Like, what size of garment are you actually going to create? The second thing is that you have to think about is, what stitch are you going to use? Now, for me, I'm using for a good majority of the top of this garment, I'm using the mesh stitch. And so I'm going to get a lot farther with the mesh stitch than if I was just doing single crochet in every stitch. And that's just the nature of the stitch. If you were doing like the thermal stitch, you're going to use a lot more yarn. If you're doing the modern granny, you're going to use more yarn than if you just did a straight granny. So how do you know how much yarn to get? That's a great question. What I do is I overbuy, and then I use it until it's gone. I always overestimate what I need. Typically, if I am knitting a shirt, I'm going to need for myself, I'm going to need like between 3,000 and 4,000 yards. If I'm crocheting a shirt, I'm probably going to need closer to, and again, depending on the stitch, and how long I want it to be, I'm probably going to end up using something closer to, or I'm going to buy, or I'm going to go shopping in my basement, for closer to like 6,000 to 7,000 yards. So how do you know how many yards are in each skein? Well, where did I put that? Sorry, guys. Okay, so on the package, or the yarn label on your yarn, you are going to find, it tells you how many ounces and how many grams. And then it will also tell you how many yards. Where's my yard? Yeah. It'll tell you how many yards. And it also depends on the weight of yarn. So if you're using a bulky yarn, you are going to need a different yardage than if you are using, sorry, my alarm went off. But like I was saying, if you're using a thicker yarn, maybe something like a 5-weight bulky, the yardage is going to be different than a 4-ply worsted, which will be different than a like a sport weight or a number 3 weight yarn. Worsted weight is usually a number 4, and then bulky is usually a number 5, and then it goes on up from there. I always overestimate how much yarn I need. That way, typically I have enough yarn. Now, I have made a sweater where I didn't have enough yarn and I had to order more, and then I had to order even more after that. But that was a learning process for myself, because I was watching all of these YouTubers that were not teeny tiny, no offense to anybody else, but they weren't as slim as some people on YouTube are. And so I had it in my head that I only needed 4 skeins of this yarn. And then I got down and was like, oh, I need 6. Well, then after getting 6, then I needed 2 more. And so I ended up getting 8. And I did end up using the majority of that yarn. In fact, I have less than 1 skein left. I know because this is 90 grams and a skein is typically 100 grams of this type of yarn. This is fingering weight. This is a yarn that I got off of Etsy in 23 and in 24. I purchased the yarn specifically to make myself a top, and I did do that. Oh, I've already put them away. I'm sorry. I should have showed this at the time that I had that sweater out, or that shirt out. So this is, I'm going to show you kind of a size comparison. So the top is fingering weight and the bottom is worsted weight. So there's quite a large difference in their diameter, which means that you get more yardage out of a thinner yarn than you do a thicker yarn. If you're following a pattern and they give you a suggestion of you need 6 of so many skeins, I'll always buy an extra one, just in case. I tend to have looser tension, and I know that. So I know that if I'm making a garment and the suggestion is, you know, you need 6 skeins, well, then I'm going to buy, well, actually, technically, if I need 6, I'm going to buy 8. If I need 5, I'm going to buy 6. That's just how I do it. As you create your garments, you're going to figure out how much you need for yourself, like how many grams and kind of how much yardage you're going to need. One thing that you can do, sorry for my reach, is you can get yourself, oh, it's kind of dirty, a food scale. It's got a lot of dust on it because it's out here where I'm working. So I use this to measure the weight of my yarn. I use it to measure the weight of my projects. That way I know how much yarn is in whatever project. I do that before I stuff my plushies and I wait until like almost the very end on most of my plushies before I actually stuff. That way I do have a chance to do some weight measurements, and I have a better idea of how much yarn is going into each project. Although I don't do that the first time I do a project, because the first time I do it, I am learning. The second time I do it, I will weigh it and I will time it and kind of figure out how much is into that plushie or that garment. I think I've talked your ear off enough, and I will be back to talk to you shortly when I have more work done. Well, shortly for you guys. It'll probably be tomorrow for me, or maybe a couple days from now. Depends on how fast I work and how much I have to sleep. So I will see you later. Oh, thank you for liking and subscribing and commenting. If you're not subscribed, please click that button. And thank you for watching my videos and being here with me and watching this journey. So I'll be back later. Hello again. I am continuing to work on my shirt. I'm in the pineapple pattern, and I will be continuing that. I have not finished my shirt yet. So today is Monday, and I really want this particular video to go out on Wednesday, and tomorrow is going to be kind of a tough day. So I am going to do absolutely as much as I can today, and then I will do my best to get the video edited and uploaded tomorrow, so then you have it for Wednesday. And then if I forget to say later on, I just want to remind you that I go live Thursday evenings at 5 Mountain West time, and Saturdays at 1 p.m. Mountain West time. Now, when I get into summertime selling, I may have to, I'm thinking I'll change those hours for the summer. However, at this point in time, my schedule is I do a Wednesday video that drops at 1 p.m. Mountain Time on Wednesdays. I do a live at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on Thursdays, and then I do a live on Saturday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. If you would like to see some of the plushies that I'm working on getting up on the website, I will be posting over the next week or so pictures, especially to like Instagram, so that you can see some of the stock that I have. I still have a whole box sitting right here that needs eyes and noses and whatnot. So I will be working on that. I'm just not too sure when just yet. But like I said, I'm going to work on this shirt today. I have quite a bit more to go in length, because it's nowhere near long enough right now for me. And I don't like crop tops because of what's going on with my lovely lumps and rolls. However, I'm going to let you know our website, Hot Dog Crochet, is live as of like Friday or Saturday. Friday. I think it was Friday. But maybe, I don't know which day it was, but it's live. So you can actually go to it. There's not really products up and listed yet, but I will be working on that. I would like to try and have that done by next weekend, but it may not happen. It will happen before the 28th of it has to happen before the 28th of April, because I will be outside selling and everything needs to be loaded up and ready to go. I did receive my card reader, so I will have that out with me. We will be doing if you're in the Cheyenne-Laramie County area, we will be doing a plant show in May, the last day of May. And then I think we might also be doing the home and garden show out at the ice rink. And we may do more. We'll have to wait and see because it depends on how things go. But yeah, I'm going to work on this sweater, and I will probably by the end of today come back and show you exactly how far I got and if it's wearable or not. I haven't tried it on in quite a while, but I do know that I still have quite a bit of length that I need to put on it. And honestly, I was concentrating on plushies rather than this. So I am going to put this first. I put it first yesterday. I'm putting it first today. I'm using a 5.5 hook, and I'm using 3-weight yarn. And I'm sorry, I'm holding my phone because I have rearranged things and I don't have my setup put back up just yet. So that's coming. It hasn't happened yet, but it is coming. What else? I think that's about it. I will have stickers that I will be putting up on the website. They're not up just yet, but they will be going up. But I think that's it. I don't have any fun new happy plushies to show you just yet, because they don't have eyes and stuff. We gotta do that. So yeah, I will talk to you later. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for liking and subscribing. We are now on our way to 100 subscribers, and I am very grateful and very happy. So thank you very, very much. And yeah, I'll talk to you later. Okay. Hello. My finished shirt. Okay. Good morning. It's Wednesday morning. I finally got around to working on this video. I am going to insert some video, I think, before this. You should have seen me in the top. So after I finished the top part where it covers my chest, I switched into the pineapple motif. And then after the pineapple motif, I switched into clusters. And then after I had finished the clusters on the front, I elongated the back and made it come to a point, just for something different. I used a lot of different, not a lot, but I used several different stitch patterns in this particular top. Because I was having fun and playing with it. I did use a sparkly yarn on the lower part of the shirt because I like that yarn. However, I don't like it next to some of my more sensitive skin, like my neck or my arms. And so that's why that yarn ended up being lower in the project. What else can I say about this? It's machine wash and dryable. It will pill some. All 3 yarns that I used in this are acrylic. However, they're also anti-pilling. So they're not supposed to pill a whole lot, but they will pill some over time. I am really happy with this particular shirt. It's not overly heavy, and it's not overly warm, but part of that is because I did so much of it in this chain mesh, which allows a lot of air to flow through. Plus the pineapple motif, as well as the basically granny clusters, that all is very open, and so it allows a lot of air to flow through, so I'm not overheating in the shirt, which is why I could use acrylic versus just using a cotton or a cotton acrylic blend. One of my favorite types of yarn to use, brands and types of yarn to use for clothing is a cotton acrylic blend, and it's 60% cotton and 40% acrylic, and it's the Karen Cotton Cakes. This is an older skein that I've had for a while. The nice thing about Michaels Pro is that you can purchase the Karen Cotton Cakes in bulk, which brings down their price. If you can catch them on, a really good sale, like a 60 to 75% off sale, that's awesome. But what I have found in the last several years is it's very difficult for me to be able to find enough of one colorway for me to be able to knit or crochet a top or a sweater. I really like the cotton cakes. They're washable, they're dryable, they don't really wrinkle. It's just a really good yarn for me to make clothes out of. This type of yarn also works well because, again, it's not going to wrinkle. It's machine washable and dryable, so I don't have to worry about any special, like you can only hand wash it or anything like that. It's usable. For me, it's usable. I do have some clothing that's machine wash and lay flat to dry that I've made with superwash wool. However, typically I will use the Karen Cotton Cakes, although I am starting to kind of branch out and try other things. However, you can use your heart's desire when you want to make clothing, whatever you're willing to do for your clothing, whether it's wash and dry, machine wash, lay flat to dry, or hand wash only. The sky is the limit. Whatever you're willing to do to care for your clothes is going to inform you about what types of yarn you can use to get the experience that you want, to get the fabric that you want, to get the type of clothing that you want. Now, this is not a raglan top. Pretty much all the tops I've made are raglans. I prefer raglan style. I really enjoy it because you don't have to think about how you're doing your increases. Whereas this is a circular yoke, and I did have to think about increases and think about how to make sure that I had enough fabric to cover mini-me, my ostomy, and to give me, breeziness and yet still give me coverage. So things that I don't want people to see, they can't see. However, honestly, however you want to make your shirt or your pants or your sweater or your scarf or your blanket, whatever you're making, the sky's the limit on the stitches. All you have to do is pick a pattern. And once you've picked that pattern, you can stick with it, or after a while, you can swap up to a different pattern. It depends on what you would like to do. If you want to do a shirt that has 10 different stitch motifs in it, or 10 different stitch placements, go for it. If you want to do a blanket that has multiple different stitch patterns to it, go for it. it's all obtainable. It's just about what you're comfortable in, you know, how you're going to care for it, as well as how you want it to look. And there's a lot of trial and error. I have made clothing that I don't wear because it's not comfortable. I have had stuff that I've made an entire shirt, and Mom was very kind and ripped it out for me so that I could use that yarn for something else, because the shirt itself was not what I needed it to be. So being a little bit adventurous and knowing that if you make a mistake, it's okay, because you can rip it out and do it over. And that the other part of that is that if you make a mistake, it's okay. Fake it till you make it. Because that's what I do. I do have errors in this particular shirt, but you can't really see them. And it would take someone really scrutinizing my stitches to figure out where those 3 errors are. So as far as I'm concerned, fake it till you make it. You can't see it, so it doesn't matter. And I'm not someone that has to be perfect. I'm someone that wants to have something functional, not perfect. And so for me, fake it till you make it means if you made a mistake a row or 2 back, yes, I can rip back to that very easily. But I weigh out the, I think about it as, does it really matter a whole lot? Are people going to be able to notice that mistake? Or am I basically going to be the only one outside of the people that I tell there's a mistake that knows there's a mistake? If I was making clothing or for someone else, I would be more diligent and I would rip back. But when I'm making something for myself, is it really worth it to rip back 2 rows to fix a mistake that I can fix when I notice it by adding the stitches back in or decreasing the stitches out? For me, no. And so I would rather have a functional piece rather than a perfect piece. Perfectionism to me is not real, because we're all perfectly imperfect, and we all learn not only from our mistakes, but how we choose to handle our mistakes. And most of the time I choose to move on, rather than go back and fix something, especially if it's for myself. If it's for my mom or a friend or whatever, I'm going to rip back and I'm going to fix it. But if I'm doing it for myself, you know, sometimes I will rip back because I have to, because if I don't, it's very noticeable. But most of the time I can fake it till I make it and add the stitches or that, you know, I dropped, or decrease out the stitches that I added in that I shouldn't have. Usually what happens with me is I forget to do a granny cluster and I just do a single crochet. Well, then in the next round, what I will do is do that granny cluster that should be in the chain 2 or chain 3 space in that single crochet, which gets me right back up to the correct stitch count. And most of the time people are not going to notice that unless I did it a lot. So like I said, the sky's the limit about what you want to create and how you're going to create it. So this is how I approach creating my own clothes. And I like to be adventurous about the stitches. I like to try different things. If I try something in knit and it works, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to try and do it in crochet too. So that is how I kind of tackle how I'm going to make my clothes. I look at a yarn, and this is going to sound silly, but I look at a yarn and I'm like, oh, that would be a great blah, 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 blah. And then I try and make it. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. But most of the time I can make a functional piece for myself. Or if I'm making something for mom, I can make it the way I want it to be. So it's very easy. I shouldn't say easy. It comes more naturally to me to kind of self-design as I'm going along, rather than trying to read a pattern for a shirt or a piece of clothing. Like I said, I kind of like to take patterns and then jump off from them rather than actually do the actual pattern. I kind of do my own thing. However, if you're not comfortable with just diving in and doing your own thing, grab a pattern. Find something that you like that's not super difficult. Look at, the stitches and, what it looks like. And if it's something like a raglan, but you have to do a lot of color changes in it, and you're not comfortable with doing color changes, that's probably not the project for you. If you want to do a raglan style granny square or a granny stitch type like cardigan or pullover, there are patterns and YouTube tutorials, and grab one of those and go for it. If you just want to dive off the end and do it yourself, that's cool too. It's all about what you're comfortable with and what works for you. I spent many, many years crocheting without patterns, and so that's what comes more naturally to me. Other people really like their patterns because that's how they learn, and that is 100% awesome. So everybody approaches their clothing, their housewares, their home, their everything from a slightly different angle. It's part of what makes us so unique and so wonderful. I hope that this will give you some inspiration so that you can find your jumping off point wherever that is. And I hope that you have a great week. I'm going to end my video like I always do, or at least how I try to always do. You are wanted, you are needed, you are loved. Be kind to everyone, including yourself, and be patient. You'll get there. No matter what seems like a roadblock to you right now, you can get there. If you're around tomorrow, Thursday, I'm going to do a live at 5 o'clock. And then I also do a live on Saturdays at 1 o'clock. This is all Mountain Standard Time. So I hopefully will see you then. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you feel like it, please comment. And I will see you next time. Bye. Thank you. Humphreys wanted to come and say hi for a moment. So I guess this is a little bit of a blooper reel, huh? Or maybe not a blooper, but just an ad, right? Just something that we're adding in. Oh, yes.